Okay, well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Esmeralda Rogers, and I will be presenting an introduction to systematic review protocols, building a blueprint for success. So today I will be explaining my background, which will lead into why protocols are necessary. I'm also going to give you some background definitions, of course. We'll cover the essential components of a protocol, and I will give you plenty of resources you can refer to later. Protocol pre-work covers what you can do to help teams that have been presented with all the essential components, but are clearly they're just not ready for protocol development. And finally, I'd like to show you a piloting process that we recommend to our researchers. I'm a big advocate of piloting your process. The protocol can feel theoretical for some, and the piloting process allows them to see how it works in practice. Before we dive in, I'd like to explain why I'm here sharing this with you today. I am currently a librarian at Texas A&M Medical Sciences Library. My position is singularly focused on complex co-authorship level reviews. I work with many departments, but I would say my biggest client base comes from public health and nursing. Before that, I was a health science liaison at UT Tyler, where I did a lot of evidence synthesis support, mostly at the consultation level. My goal today is to share the lessons I wish someone had shared with me. Mainly that those who jump into reviews without a solid plan tend to get tangled up. I encourage protocol development because it provides essential insight into all the working pieces of a review. Creating a plan gives researchers an overview of the process and forces them to think through each step before execution. The plan also acts as a touchstone of sorts that helps teams stay on task when they find literature that may be compelling, but falls outside the project's defined boundaries. That's project drift. So there are many different review types, enough probably to fill another scholarly snippet. I am focusing on systematic reviews and scoping reviews. The guidance resources are readily available, and they're the ones that I get asked to help with the most. This description was my attempt to integrate a very simplified kind of high-level process with the definitions. So both start with a research question. In a perfect world, after that, you develop your protocol. So for the review questions, systematic reviews have a very specific, narrowly focused question, while scoping reviews are broader and more exploratory. Based on the research question and eligibility criteria, you create a comprehensive search for relevant studies. You screen the studies to find those that will help you answer the research question. Conduct risk of bias assessment for systematic reviews. This is optional for scoping. Extract data from the studies and synthesize your findings. So for systematic reviews, it's a deep analysis. It can include quantitative analysis called meta-analysis. For scoping reviews, synthesis is can be much more descriptive. Think of charting, identifying trends, making categories, or mapping gaps in the literature. So a protocol, I'm just going to read this definition verbatim. It is a detailed outline and guiding document for your review. It describes the rationale, research question, and methods before the review begins. Registered a priori protocol in advance of the work before the work begins is highly recommended and required by many publishers. I've seen manuscript submissions where they actually ask for your registration number when you submit. So the core benefits are that it minimizes bias. Drafting and registering a protocol forces you to define your selection and analysis methods in advance. It discourages researchers from making little, often unconscious adjustments to their criteria if the evidence isn't going where they hoped, thereby keeping the process honest. Second, it improves transparency. Formal, detailed documentation of planned methods supports reproducibility. By registering the protocol, you make it easier for others to locate, understand, and even replicate your work. Third, it increases efficiency. A clear plan acts as your team's blueprint for success. It streamlines the entire process, actively prevents the costly time sinks of scope drift, and reduces the redundancy of having to rescreen or re-extract data because criteria were vague. So it's an investment that pays major returns in saved time. What should a protocol include? According to PRISMA-P, that's very, I don't want to say popular, an important reporting standard. Your protocol should include all of these things. In the left column, the administrative information and introduction are pretty straightforward. In the introduction section, rationale is where you provide background, you place your proposed review in the context of the existing scholarly landscape. It's your opportunity to explain why your review is needed, and if you found similar reviews, to explain how yours will differ or add to the existing knowledge. Objectives also include your research question, which should be very clear and use the appropriate question framework. The PRISMA document itself mentions the PICO framework, but there are others that apply, like PCC for scoping reviews, population exposure outcome, PEO is another one. In the right-hand column is the method section and a list of all relevant items. This is much more in depth, as you can see. So on the next page, I'm giving you a screenshot of the method section from the PRISMA-P checklist. The checklist itself gives you brief overviews of what each item entails. But if you need more details, we also have an elaboration and explanation paper that goes through each and every item on this checklist. It gives you an example and a full explanation. The DOI is down there, but you will have the links later, I promise. To go through a few, I'm not going to hit every one. So I've used the term eligibility criteria already. This refers to the specific characteristics a study must have in order to be included in your review, or conversely, what characteristics will get excluded. And it's important not to think of your exclusion criteria as just kind of opposites of inclusion, but as additional practical limits. As an example, you might include all studies on persons taking GLP-1s, but exclude persons taking GLP-1s with a history of bariatric or gastric sleeve surgeries. Information sources is a big one for librarians, of course. Think about, where will you search? What dates are covered by your databases? Will you search registers? How will you conduct forward and reverse citation searching? How are you going to handle gray literature? There's a lot there. So I recommend looking at the explanation elaboration. Search strategy. I'm actually going to drag my mouse over. I do want to point out here, such that it could be repeated. Keep in mind, your search should be reported so clearly that someone else can run it, basically. And I would like to point out that you should include a draft of the search for one database. You're not just kind of giving a narrative description and a list of keywords. PRISMA also has a reporting standard for searching called PRISMA Search. That's out of the scope of this presentation, but I did want to make sure everybody knew that it exists. The study record section. This needs to be very detailed and specific. So you should mention if a specific software is going to be used for screening, like Covidence is what we have at A&M. You should describe how many screeners are there going to be. Will it be independent screening? I sure hope so. How are you going to settle disputes? So there's a lot to it. Resources. So here is a list of resources to help you. There's plenty of guidance, including Cochrane for systematic reviews of health interventions, and JBI for systematic or scoping reviews. And of course, PRISMA-P, which we've touched upon. It will give you a really nice snapshot of what is needed. There are also plenty of templates out there. You can do a Google search for systematic review protocol templates. But we do have a few on our A&M systematic review LibGuide. And again, you'll have links to that. And once your protocol is done, you should register it. Here's a list of places you can register. The ones I have personal experience with are Prospero. I never know whether to say Prospero or Prospero. Open Science Framework and JBI Systematic Review Register. I will point out that you have to be an affiliate to use that one. I'm from Texas, and the only school I can think of that I was able to help register was TCU. They're an affiliate. Okay. So what if they are not ready? Here's a common scenario. A researcher wants to do a systematic review on adolescent vaping interventions. They have some background literature from PubMed, but are unsure if they want to investigate the effectiveness of a particular intervention or explore existing intervention programs like the range. They want to know what's out there. After some discussion, you realize they simply do not have enough background knowledge or direction to develop a protocol. So how can you help? In this case, first make sure they understand that their research question is going to determine the appropriate review type. If they're insistent that it needs to be a systematic review, sometimes they get pretty hung up on that, then just make sure they understand what that is. To start, the research question will need to be very specific as opposed to the more exploratory scoping review questions. And if needed, give them some question frameworks. So they might not necessarily know all the components yet, but you can explain to them what a PICO question is or what a PEO question will look like. You can help them with a mediated search. At this point, I do not recommend wearing yourself out by trying to do the most comprehensive search possible. I try to put that off until their eligibility criteria and PICO components are more solidified, because chances are you are going to have to redo it once they figure out their direction. From that mediated search, give them related reviews and maybe 50 to 100 studies. It's important not to overwhelm them. Like, yes, I've done a scoping search where I've gotten 5,000 results, but if I hand them all of those, their eyes get big and they get scared, basically. And if they don't have a direction yet, you need to help them find it. So with that smaller set of studies, they should use them to get enough background knowledge to establish their own research question and approach. They will look at the reviews from that set to be able to define how their review is different. They should really closely analyze the research question, the eligibility criteria from existing reviews to figure out what direction they should go in. Those studies will also help them understand the existing body of work, hopefully well enough to establish their own inclusion and exclusion criteria. And the part that I really enjoy is from those references, hopefully they can give me seed articles for search development. So these are studies that they look at and they think, wow, these are perfect. This is exactly what I would include. If they will give me those, it'll go a long way to helping me build a search. And of course, give them protocol resources, PRISMA-P, if nothing else, to help them understand all of the pieces of a review. Okay, so the pilot project can be a great tool for teams who have either written their protocols and want to test the methods, or for teams who have established their research question and eligibility criteria, but don't quite understand the review process. The pilot gives them an opportunity to try out screening, data extraction, quality assessment. It helps establish their processes and ultimately write their protocol. Regardless of the category the team might fall into, the pilot project is just another tool for increasing overall efficiency of the final project. Here's an overview of our piloting process. The librarian executes a comprehensive and reasonably exhaustive, but not final, search in the most relevant database. For us, that's usually Medline. We like Ovid Medline. Some of you will use PubMed. We upload usually to start 50 references into Covidence, which is the screening tool that we have. The team does title abstract screening, they do full text review, and they should be documenting their process as they go. They develop their data extraction template and decide on their quality assessment tool or tools if needed. These are also input into Covidence so they can test data extraction and risk of bias assessment on maybe 2 to 3 studies. In roughly half of our reviews, researchers realize that they need to change their eligibility criteria after testing extraction. So this is one of the reasons why the search is reasonably exhaustive, but not necessarily final. If the eligibility criteria changes enough, we end up having to modify the search. So the piloting process allows our researchers to clearly explain the dual screening process, blinding, how conflicts were resolved, and how the data extraction template was created or modified. The process by which extraction was done can be better understood. Again, was independent and blinded. They're going to clearly understand the entire process so they can write it up for their protocol. Or as I mentioned, for those who have a completed protocol, it allows them to test their process in a low-stakes environment. In software like Covidence, changing your data extraction template mid-project forces you to redo work on every study already processed. So by extracting from just 1 to 2 studies in the pilot, you finalize your template and avoid catastrophic rework that could occur if you are already 25 studies into your final project. To conclude, teams should embrace the protocol as a blueprint that defends against bias and creates important boundaries to prevent scope creep. Introducing protocol components also promotes understanding of all the working pieces of a review project. For teams that are struggling to start, and I use the word unprepared here with all love, like this is not meant to be disparaging at all. So use your expertise to help them clarify the question and provide initial literature they will need to define their scope clearly. And finally, piloting the methods on a small set of studies can help teams solidify criteria, their extraction template, and increase overall efficiency of the project. So here are the resources, all of the different places, standards and all of that I talked about. I tried to include all of them here. And you also have a QR code that will get you to a copy of the presentation so you can have the live links. Do we have any questions?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to, or add your questions in the group chat.
Can you go back to the QR code for a moment?
Oh, sorry about that. Yep, there it is.
I will also be uploading the slides to our scholarly snippets libguide. and I will link that from the YouTube page.
So I see, what's the biggest challenge you have noticed among researchers in the process of writing systematic reviews? So I'm going to assume you mean they've done all the work. Like they've done the screening, they've synthesized their information, now they're trying to write the manuscript. So fortunately, Prisma really helps them work through those things. The biggest challenge that I have noticed actually is kind of merging the journal requirements, the very specific journal requirements for the article with the PRISMA-P reporting. Like they want to outline it exactly the way the Prisma document, I keep saying P, I'm sorry. I'm Prisma for systematic and scoping reviews. So they basically will structure it according to the Prisma, like align it perfectly, and then they get to their journal submission and they realize that the headings need to be different. They need to kind of merge some things to comply with the journal, and that can be frustrating. But it just kind of, I really don't have a solution for that. I would say just no. I try to encourage them to come up with a target journal early so that they can know those requirements in advance when they're writing up their manuscript. And I know just because it's your target journal, there's no guarantee that it'll get accepted, but it's a place to start. Does the pilot project add to the overall timeline of the project? I'm going to say no because the pilot is very small scale. Like when I've done reviews, searches, there's usually thousands of studies to screen, right? So just doing a tiny subset of like 50 for them to screen. And really the key is getting that extraction template just perfect before they start the real work. So I think my argument would be anytime they feel that they're wasting on a pilot project, you can point to if there's a mistake or something you feel like you need to correct in extraction when you're 50 studies deep, you're going to spend a whole lot of time doing rework that you could have saved if you had just piloted your process. What's the okay. Do you have a list or a way to find journals that require or ask for your protocol number? Are there any important journals that might incentivize public health and nursing faculty to write and register? I honestly do not have the answer to that question. I do not know. I do not have a list of journals that require. This is just kind of word of mouth. Like I'll have a coworker who's helping a team submit and they're like, oh, they asked for a registration number. And then the team's like, uh-oh, we never registered it. It's like they've written it but didn't register. So they're kind of scrambling to put it into OSF so they can have a registration number for submission. And no, unfortunately, I don't know of journals that incentivize public health or nursing faculty to write and register. Do you ever assist researchers with narrative reviews using a systematic approach? So I have, in that I've walked them through using Covidence for screening. So it's a narrative review, but they want a comprehensive search, and they're coming up with so many studies that instead of trying to read through them all or put them into a reference manager, they'll actually use Covidence just to do the quick. And you can actually set Covidence so that it's a single screener. So if it's not formal and doesn't require 2 reviewers, you can set it to 1. So they can look at the titles and abstracts, very easily include and exclude in that way. So I have assisted in that manner. I've also kind of shown them Prisma to give them an idea of what kinds of things they can report, with an understanding that It's not strictly required for a narrative review. It's just a good guideline. And is it necessary to clear out the covenants data from the 50 to 100 for screening and extraction? That is a tricky question. So if we have an unlimited number of reviews, our institution has an unlimited number. So we have two options. If they have done their piloting and figured out that their eligibility criteria and or extraction template needed to change a whole lot, then we just start a brand new review. You don't really clear it out. Actually, I have had an instance where I've had to email the covenants people to clear, if you don't have unlimited reviews, you can export like your studies, for example, just to make sure you're preserving something. And the covenants admin people can clear the data for you. But for the most part, we just start a brand new review. The other thing that I have done is if they've done the piloting project and there have been minimal changes, like even the search has barely changed, they can just keep working in there. Like I'll just kind of exclude, I'll run the search again and exclude the first 50 to 100 references that were originally updated, and just put them in and they can keep going. Okay, we had a new faculty member last year that was insistent that she needed covenants for her classes, but we don't have that at our institution and I've never worked with it. Can you explain what covenants does? Is it necessary for systematic reviews or can they be done without it? So it's a lovely systematic review tool. There are others that are free, SysRev, RevMan, maybe. There's free versions, and Covenants actually does have free versions as well. It's just that you'll have a limitation on how many studies you can upload, and how many reviews you can have. So you could encourage them to make a free account. So basically what it does, it makes it very easy to import studies. It deduplicates everything, which is wonderful. It does a very good job at deduplicating. So let's say I upload 500 Medline references, and then I go to Embase and run a search and upload 1,000 Embase references, but there was an overlap of 500. Well, Covenants will deduplicate those for me. It puts them in kind of a bucket, I guess you can call it, so that they can screen by title and abstract, and that literally is just looking at titles, looking at abstracts, saying yes, no, I want to include it. Everything that gets included moves into full text review, where you're supposed to take a deeper look at the full text article. So it's very nice for screening. The data extraction is definitely harder. You have to come up with, they have a default template, but you can make your own in there. And some of my researchers will go ahead and choose to use like Google Forms or something else. So it's nice. It's a great tool for systematic reviews. There are alternatives. That's the short answer. Yes, Rayan is another product similar to Covenants, and free.
And we'll be having a snippet actually December 11th. That's the information I put there to register for that. I haven't sent out the promotional stuff on that, but if you want to go ahead and register for that, that's upcoming. Then
We're just about out of time. I can try to grab one more right quick. I don't know.
Yeah,
Do I encourage researchers to publish? No, not really. I encourage registration. Publication comes with fees. So that's the biggest reason why I don't.
Well, so I want to say thanks to Esmeralda for this really informative, really helpful presentation. I know I learned some stuff that I have missed in working with my groups. I just put in the chat our survey link, our YouTube channel, and our registration link for our next presentation, which actually I have incorrect. It's going to be which that's you, again, Esmeralda, yes?
What now?
You're, oh, no, sorry, the AI tools, that next, no, I'm sorry.
No, no,
Have
that's not
someone
me.
presenting twice in a row.
Okay, not me.
Her name starts with E as well. So, yeah, I really appreciated that. And if you want to present on those other research topics that you said you could present on their own, please, please go ahead and let me know when.
Okay. I saw the all call for next semester. I'll sign up for something.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And thanks everyone for joining us. I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you, guys.